Don't even look through them. But
okay, let me try.
You just look over them.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming to Human Design number 27. I'll see how long I can do this for. We're at number 27, 27th consecutive week. This is a continuation of last week. We're going to be talking about the lines. So the lines are a really beautiful aspect of human design. So first I'm going to talk about what lines are. What do we mean by lines? Lines of the I Ching. And then we're going to have volunteers, and we're going to read about particular lines that you carry, that you possess. So first of all, what are the lines? The lines come from the I Ching. So if you're familiar with the I Ching is an ancient system of Chinese philosophy and mysticism that has 64 hexagrams, which are each, essentially mythopoetic images. It's kind of like tarot. It's like tarot cards, or like the astrological signs. So you can learn about these individual hexagrams. But each hexagram, hex, meaning 6, is comprised of 6 lines. And so one way to look at it is that you have these 64 hexagrams that each have 6 lines. Right? So there's 6 variations of each of the hexagrams. The other way to look at it, which I actually think is even more fruitful, is that there's 6 lines, and each of the 6 lines has 64 variations, depending on the hexagram. You see, it's a perspective shift. And they're both valid ways to look at it. Either you're taking the 6 fundamental lines and you see that there's 64 first lines, there's 64 second lines, there's 64 third lines, and so on, or you're doing the opposite. But the reason that I like looking at the 6 lines is because some of you have already studied your profile. And if you studied profile, you already have a good idea of some of the themes of lines. We have a 3-5, a 4-6, a 6-3, a 4-6, and 2-6-2s here. And so if you know about your profiles, if you learned about what it is, we actually have we have an overrepresentation of 6s here. There's a lot of 6 here going on. Yeah. But, and we're going to talk a lot about the 6th line. In fact, maybe I can start. I want to actually go into, I'll start by going into what the lines actually are. So, because that's a real question for some people. What are the lines? Like, how do we determine the lines? How does it work? And so let's just get to just the mechanics of it. And for this, we have to kind of imagine, we have to start with the Earth going around the sun. So we all know that the Earth takes 365.25 days to go around the sun. And that the Earth also takes 1 day to spin on its axis, right? A day is 1 revolution of the Earth on its own axis. A year is 1 revolution of the Earth on the sun's axis. So we have these 2 axial points, the Earth and the sun. So starting with these fundamental measurements of the passage of time, we can then start to subdivide the year. So one of the most fundamental subdivisions of the year is the seasons. Right? The seasons is a subdivision by 4. And we subdivide along the equinoxes and the solstices. Another common subdivision is the 12 astrological signs. This gets closer to the 12 months. The months are also a subdivision by 12. Well, before we get to line, we have to understand that hexagrams are a subdivision, and lines are also a subdivision. So all we're doing when we're talking about lines, we're talking about a length of time that's the same every year, right? It's a particular subdivision of time within the year. So, for instance, right now I'm going to Jovian Archive just now. So I'm going to look at the just now chart, which tells exactly where the sun is right now. Now, we talk about the sun. This is something, if you're familiar with astrology, you'll understand that we act geocentrically, even though we know the Earth is going around the sun, because the sun is always at a certain position on the ecliptic. So it's really just a perspectival shift, whether you imagine the Earth going around the sun or whether you imagine the sun going around the Earth. This is why, for so many years, humans didn't realize that we had it backwards. We thought the sun went around us. But it's because, perspectively speaking, it doesn't really make a difference with the math. Of course, it makes a difference in certain ways, but in terms of how you visualize it, if you imagine a circle around the Earth, on any given day, the sun will be at a certain point on that circle. And if you wait an entire year, the sun will be at the exact same point on the circle again. So this is how we start by subdividing. You can imagine that there's 4 subdivisions, that's the seasons. You can imagine there's 12 subdivisions, the months or the astrological signs. When we get to the hexagrams, what we're actually doing is 64 subdivisions. So right now, the sun is in the 3rd line of gate 14. Every year in November, just around this time, obviously there's leap years, which changes it slightly, but every year it's going to be in 14.3 around this time of year. So hexagram 14, line 3, that's a certain quality of time. It's a certain division of time. Now, because there's 64 hexagrams and there's 365 days in a year, we spend 5.7 days, or about 137 hours, in each hexagram. So what that means is that we are living out the quality of time of that hexagram for 5.7 days. Then it goes to the next hexagram, then the next, and the next. Now, each hexagram is subdivided by 6 lines, equidistant lines. And I know this is a very technical part of it, and then we're going to get to the meaning of it. I just want to go over the basics so everybody understands the technical aspect of it. So in every 5.7 day segment of time, the hexagram, we subdivide by 6, so we get around 21 hours for each line, which means the sun spends 21 hours in the first line, and then the second, then the third, the fourth, fifth, sixth. Then it moves to the next hexagram. So the 6 lines repeat again and again and again throughout each hexagram. It goes first line, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then it transitions to the first line of the next hexagram. Pardon? It's approximately, it's 21 hours rather than 24 hours. But again, 5.7 days. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. So at any given moment in time, the entire Earth, like right now, even in Shanghai, the entire Earth is in the 3rd line of gate 14. So yeah, it changes at it doesn't matter what time of day it is. The Earth itself is moving through space, moving into these new sectors. So just like we have 12 signs of the zodiac, for instance, there's also, it's also just a subdivision. Is there a question? Oh, no. Okay. Stretching. Good. So, this is the most technical part of it, and then we're going to have a lot more fun with it. But this is just so we understand what we're talking about. And the other thing I'd like to say is what's so interesting is that as we go through the year, we all basically experience the qualities of time of any given moment in time. So like right now, the sun is in gate 14. It's in the 3rd line. But the moon is also in a location in the sky. The moon is in gate 7. And Mercury is in gate 44, and Venus is in gate 26, and so on. And so what's interesting is that at any given moment in time, each of the planets will be in a particular gate in a particular line. Again, this is just a method of subdividing space along the ecliptic. We're simply subdividing space. They do it in astrology. There's 30 degrees for each sign. That's 30 subdivisions for each of the 12 signs, which themselves are subdivisions of the 360-degree circle, which is the ecliptic. It's the circle of our sky. So similarly, instead of dividing by 360 degrees, we're simply dividing by 64 hexagrams, which each subdivide by 6 lines, which gives us 384 lines. So that's how we're dividing. There's 384 equidistant divisions of time in the year, which is, again, why they come to about 21 hours each, because there's 365 days, 384 lines, so there's more lines than there are days, hence the lines are slightly less than a day each. Okay, so this is simply a method for tracking where the planets are. Now, one interesting point I want to get before we go into the meaning of the lines and start to kind of deconstruct some of the keynotes of the lines is simply that at any given moment in time, we're all feeling the quality of that time based on the configuration of planets in the sky. These planets filter neutrinos. At any given moment, we have millions and millions of neutrinos. You could isolate a square inch of your body, and there's like millions of neutrinos per second going through that square inch of the body from stars, from the sun, and from Jupiter, because Jupiter used to be a star. The other planets do not emit neutrinos, but they do filter them because the neutrinos pass through the planets on their way here. So Mars doesn't create any new neutrinos, but all the stars behind Mars at any given moment are filtered through Mars, right? Does that make sense? So So we're living in a sea of neutrinos. We're living in a waterfall of neutrinos, which are these infinitesimal little particles. This is what, it's one of actually the most hot topics in astrophysics. And it's a very much a cutting edge thing. I mean, neutrino research is very much at the cutting edge of our knowledge. And the interaction of neutrinos with atomic matter, as well as the interaction of neutrinos potentially with dark matter and with dark energy, is a very cutting edge thing. So the sun is where we get most of our neutrinos from. So that's why the sun is given so much importance in astrology and in human design, because the sun emits about 70% of the neutrinos that flow through our body at any given moment in time. It doesn't matter if it's day or night. Neutrinos go through the earth, you know what I mean? So it could be nighttime, but the neutrinos are going straight through the ground to get to us. In fact, I was trying to find the exact number. So in the vicinity of the Earth, about 65 billion solar neutrinos per second pass through every square centimeter, perpendicular to the direction of the sun. 65 billion in every square centimeter. So this is what I'm saying. I mean, we're in a sea of neutrinos. So the interesting thing, and this is something that Ra Uru Hu mentioned, which I think is really cute. He has a lot of cute. He even uses the word cute to describe it, I think. Because it is that at any given moment in time, we're all living in this neutrino sea. We're all feeling that moment in time. And then what happens? Someone's born. Someone's being born right now. Someone's being born right now, 7:31 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday, November 18th, 2019. They're being born right now. And when they're being born, they are imprinted, their personality imprint, the imprint of their mind, is imprinted with the quality of the neutrinos right now. And so in a way, and this is the cute thing that he mentions, in a way, at every given moment in time, we're greeting every new life that's being born. Maybe like right now, the channel, the 2644 is active, which is that channel of the transmitter, the channel, or the channel of surrender. But it's really about, it has some esoteric names, but it's really about material resources. It's about the cold-blooded spleen interfacing with the hot-blooded ego and all these things. And everyone born right now has that defined ego. Everyone born right now has that channel. But all of us who don't have that channel are feeling it and being conditioned by it and able to experience it. The 5027 is also active right now. And all of us who don't have that channel are feeling that frequency. That's a channel of preservation. It's all about being responsible for things. And, maybe now, like a minute ago, I put this down on the organ. I thought, no, I don't want to make a ring on that. I want to preserve this organ. A different day, I might not have thought of that. Because we're all living in a neutrino field of conditioning. But someone born at this exact moment possesses that imprint through their entire life. Everywhere they go, their aura is emanating that frequency. And people are being careful not to put rings on wood, so to speak.
If we say, on the 6th, if we went back to the day that happened on October 7th, 1984, do you think we could look at, what's going on in the world, or even what's going on in someone's behavior to indicate that would be a 6-3 day? Do you have
absolutely. So the question is, if you go back to the moment of birth, do you see themes? And absolutely, if you're a third line, everything that day was breaking. The cars were breaking down, people were walking through sliding doors, whatever. Like, it was a day of mistakes. And so you can absolutely watch it. If it's a first line day, everyone's really introverted and investigated and starting on their own thing. And if it's a fifth line day, there's crisis is happening and so on. Yeah. Crises. Yeah, so this is the interesting thing, is that at any given moment in time... Pardon?
What line is today?
We are in a third line day.
Cool.
Yeah, 14-3. So basically, so you start to learn the qualities of the lines. And as I was saying, if you know your profiles, you know some of the fundamental qualities of the lines. I mean, we give them keynotes. And what is a keynote? A keynote is a word that helps us evoke a certain image or a certain symbol. And we still have to unpack that. We have to deconstruct that. A keynote is basically just a word that's a very packed, full of meaning kind of thing. And we can give different keynotes depending on what we're talking about. But when we're talking about a profile, for instance, the first line keynote is the investigator, second line is the hermit, third line martyr, the fourth line opportunist, the fifth line heretic, and the sixth line role model. And these are keynotes that we actually all take from gate 10, because those are the names of the lines in gate 10. And what you'll find is that when you're learning these lines, going through the different gates, that there's a real continuity. I don't have gate 14 in my chart, but if I read the fifth line of gate 14, because I'm a 5-1, I can relate to it. We can relate to all 64 of the lines, particularly of our profile, particularly of the conscious line of our profile, because that's the sun and the earth. And again, the personality sun is 70% of the makeup of your mind, of your personality, basically. So we can relate to it. So that's what we're going to be doing here. As we progress, we're going to have volunteers, or we can go through and we'll actually read the line you were born into. We'll read exactly what line, like you were born into line 6 of gate 41, Michael. So we'll read about that. First, we'll read about gate 41. We'll try to understand it, and then we'll see how, depending what line you were born into, you express a different quality of that gate. So if you're a first line, it's all about what is it? What is it about? Gate 41, for instance, is the gate of fantasy. If you're born in the first line, meaning if you were born approximately 4 days before Michael, then you'd be the first line of gate 41. Your life would be, what is fantasy, really? What does it mean to have a fantasy? What is and what isn't fantasy? What is it? Let's investigate it. Let's learn about fantasy. What kinds of fantasies do people have? And so on. You get to the second line. The second line just wants to live it existentially. If you know about the second line in the profile, they don't care about learning about anything. They just want to live it out. They want to live it. They want to be it. You get to the third line, they're going to test it. So the third line is going to be like, let's test how good your fantasy really is. Because gate 41 is not just idle fantasy. It's fantasy as a fuel for action. So the third line is going to say, let's test what fantasies actually fuel action and what fantasies are just idle speculation. By the time you get to the fourth line is externalizing everything. They're spreading it. So they're just going to share their fantasies. They're going to influence people. Hundreds of people will gain new fantasies from the fourth line, basically advertising those fantasies. And then you get to the fifth line is going to be the heretic. And they're going to say, all the fantasies that have come before, are not my fantasy. And everyone's going to project on them and say, you should have this fantasy and you should have that fantasy. I know gate 41, line 5. And everyone's constantly trying to, wait, isn't this your fantasy? They're imagining what her fantasies are and projecting on her. But by the time you get to the sixth line, and we'll read about it momentarily, you probably don't really care much about fantasy. Because the sixth line is like, been there, done that. It's bored with it. It's done with it. It's not really trying to do much with it at all. It already has 1 foot in the next line, or the next gate. It has 1 foot in the first line of the next gate. So the sixth line is ready to become the first line of the next gate. It's ready to leave behind everything before it. It doesn't care about everything that came before it. It's like, I'm sick of fantasy. What else is out there? Isn't there something so much more? And, so looking in gate 41, looking at gate 41 in Aquarius, we see that the next gate is gate 19. Gate 19, all about flirtation. What use is a fantasy if you're not gonna flirt a little bit with it, or if you're not going to, put it into some sort of use? Because gate 19 is about flirtation for evoking material resources. Flirtation that gets the other person to say, okay, no, I like you, I'll buy you this, and I'll protect you in that way, and I'll do this for you. I mean, gate 19 is about a lot of other things, too. It's obviously part of the channel of the butcher and how we protect animals. We domesticate animals through the 19 as well, which is also a topic for a different day, because how funny is that the same channel that's responsible for flirtation is also about domestication. But that's part of it. Flirting through gate 19 is not just idle flirtation, just like gate 41 is not just idle fantasy. These are both fuel gates. They're in the root. It fuels action. 19 is about flirting to evoke possession, basically. This is where all jealousy comes from. 1949 is the root of jealousy. It's a tribal channel connecting the root to the solar plexus. Mikey has this gate, so he's like, I'm not jealous. What? I'm not the jealous type. But everyone around him is being conditioned to feel jealousy and to feel possessive and so on, among other positive qualities. I don't want to make it a negative thing. I mean, there's a real beautiful side to it as well. You see the 1949s, in their long-term relationships holding hands and having all that tribal affection, and there's a real sweetness there. I don't mean to diminish it. But in any case, you can see that gate 41, by the time you're in the sixth line, is tired of fantasy. It wants to move on to what's next. Let's flirt. Let's make a relationship out of it. Let's evoke, some sense of possessiveness in the other. So I'm going to read now what I wrote on the Facebook description for the event, because I think it's a good example of this. And it's a good example how you can literally study the Rave Mandala, which is the gates, and you can read through gate to gate. And if you spend enough time looking at it and looking at the lines, it tells an incredible, beautiful story, where each gate is all about the need to fulfill a certain potential of what it means to be a human being, a nine-centered being in this world. And to fulfill that potential, and how the first line is like, what is the potential about? And the second line is, I'm living it, or I'm trying it out. And the third line is, let's test it out. And the fourth line is, let's spread it to other people. And the fifth line is, let's revolutionize it, and let's push the envelope with it. And by the time you get to the sixth line, it's, but what I really need is the next thing. That's what's so funny about it. By the time you get to the sixth line is like, in some ways, outside of the hexagram. It doesn't care about the hexagram it's part of. It's already ready to go to the next. So here's what I wrote about, let's take gate 8. If anyone knows gate 8, it's in the G center. It's all about direction in life. It's really the magnetic monopole. It's the gate of the magnetic monopole. It's the gate about, this is your direction, this is, you have it, MF. It's, yeah. And
isn't it the throat?
it's in the G center connected to the throat.
I thought the one was in the G center.
Oh, okay. No, 8 is in the, oh, sorry. You're right, it's in the throat. Okay, so my bad. It's about the expression of the direction of life. 1 is really the direction of life then, and the 8 is its expression. And you have it too, Trevor. You actually both have the same channel. You both have the 1-8. Yeah, no, you're right. I apologize. That channel, though, is about expressing direction in life. So it's
Or not. Or not.
Yeah, no, there's always no or not, but basically it's going to be the or not part of it is that at any given moment, the person who possesses a particular gate, a particular line, they're going to kind of be in charge of whether it happens or not. Like I was talking to you about this 2 weeks ago, Daniel, how you have the 59-6. That's all about intimacy or not. So Daniel chooses when intimacy occurs.
Right.
And if Daniel doesn't want that intimacy, it's not going to happen. It's like putting your foot down on it.
He doesn't like the music, he's not dancing.
Yeah, if you don't like the music, you're not dancing. Exactly. So that's the or not. So the direction of life, but they know when they have that direction. So in this case, anyway, it's about the expression of the direction of life. And so, it's about so the first line, so somebody born into the first line of gate 8 is going to be really exploring, how do I express myself? What does it mean to be verbally creative? What does it mean to be a verbal gunslinger? What does it mean to be able to express myself in creative ways? Because it's a very verbally creative channel, right? So the first line is going to be investigating what that means. By the time you get to the sixth line, it's looking at the next hexagram, gate 20. The sixth line says, yes, self-expression is all well and good, direction is all well and good, but what does it matter if you're not present in the moment? Because gate 20 is all about being present in the moment. By the time you get to the end of gate 8, you don't really care as much about self-expression. The sixth line is already about gate 20.
So that sixth line, say it's in gate 8, it wouldn't be towards gate 9, you're saying it would be towards gate 20?
Yeah, because it's the next gate. Right, the question is, why doesn't it go to gate 9? The numbers of the gates are from King Wen. And this is a great question, thank you for that. And it's the King Wen sequence. And so basically this was an emperor of China who created a sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He named, the gates, or he numbered them rather. And if you look at the Rave Mandala, which we use in human design, it doesn't actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes, it starts in 41, and it goes 41, 19, 13, 49, 30, 55, and so on. But it's not arbitrary. If you look at the actual yin and yang lines, you'll see all sorts of incredible, beautiful symmetries, so that directly opposite, meaning the opposite day of year, 6 months apart, are always opposite yin and yang lines. And that they're changing by one line at a time as they move. They're changing, it's like each quarter, this is maybe a topic for a different day, but each quarter of the Rave Mandala, each 8th of the Rave Mandala, each 16th of the Rave Mandala, each 32nd, and ultimately each 64th, possesses commonalities. And that's why there's a real internal logic there, which is easier to visually see when you look at it.
So just one question on this topic.
Okay.
So if you're 6'3", right? You're 6. What are you looking for? What are you looking at next? What is that?
Well, what gate were you born into?
52.2, I believe.
Well, that's the Earth then, because 50. if it's going to be point, the point after the point is the line. So are you Cancer? No, you're a Libra like me. You're a Libra. So 52 would be your design side. So what's your personality? That's not in Libra though. It's a splenic. Yeah, no. I'll have to pull it up. No. This is a good question. It's a good question, and this is what we're gonna do next after we kind of cover the basics. No, it's okay. We're gonna go through and look at what lines people are born into, and we're gonna see. So that's a good question though. So your sun is actually it's in Libra in gate 48 in the spleen, the gate of depth, which makes a lot of sense for you. And the next one is gate 57, the gate of intuition. So this is basically gate 48 is all about having solutions. It's all about having a wealth of solutions, a depth of solutions, being able to solve every problem, being able to have this accumulation of solutions to things. And it's logical, right? But gate 57 is about having that flash of intuition. It's individual. And it's really about being intelligent and being smart. It's a gate of intelligence, where all intelligence comes from. And having solutions is different from being smart. Having solutions is more about collecting solutions to problems. So you being born into the 6th line of the gate of solutions is kind of like, yeah, I can fix a lot of stuff, but what's really important is that I'm intuitive and that I trust my intuition and that I trust my intelligence and cultivate my intelligence. Because I could have all the solutions in the world, what good is it going to do if I don't have that intuition and that intelligence?
So you would say this even if he doesn't have 57 lit up?
Right, he doesn't. But it's looking towards 57. The 6th line is always yearning to have that next thing.
So what's after 38?
Let's see. It's 38. Oh, because that's your unconscious. 38 in the root. It's 38. It's not Capricorn. What is it? 38 in the gate of the fighter. So, no, I think it was in Capricorn. It is Capricorn. Yeah, it's Capricorn. So it's 54. So basically 38 is saying, 38 is all about, it's an individual root gate that's all about having the energy to fight for meaning, to fight for purpose, to fight for basically something more meaningful than procreation and eating and sleeping. Because those, but someone who only has the 38, who doesn't have the 28, will have all that energy to fight for it, but not necessarily know where to put that energy. They have the energy to struggle without necessarily knowing that. When you have the 28 and the 38 together, you get the channel of struggle, which you have, Michael, and that's all about, on the one hand, having the energy to persevere and the stubbornness to stick with something, kind of like a Martin Luther King Jr. or a Gandhi kind of theme. On the other hand, it can also just be like, you don't want them around when you're fixing your computer because their energy field is going to make everything a struggle. Like, make the 28, 38 sleep when you're fixing your car. Like, you don't want them around. It's going to be a struggle. But you do want them around if you're writing a book or something, because a book is a struggle. It's really hard to finish a book. And someone like me doesn't have that. I'm not going to finish the book without the 28, 38s in my life. So I'm really thankful to have them in my life because they're going to energize me to struggle. Now, by the time you get to the 6th line of gate 38, it's kind of like, yeah, I have the energy to fight, to persevere on my own. It's individual channel. It's about being on your own and fighting for it. But what good is that if I'm not interacting with other people? Gate 54, the gate of mundane interaction, and the next one, right? Which is all about how am I going to work with other people, and so on. Now, if it's your unconscious line, you're not going to have a lot of connection to it. That's the interesting thing, is that when I do readings for people, I oftentimes will read them the lines of their personality, because no matter how much somebody tries to convince you that they're in touch with the design, it's a purely unconscious process. You can realize that you possess that quality, but you do it automatically. For instance, I have the 952 completely unconsciously. The 952 is a channel of concentration. I've now realized this about myself, but I don't notice when I'm doing it. It's automatic. It's completely automatic. So to have the gate 38, line 6 unconsciously on your design side is going to be this sort of automatic, yes, I have the energy to fight. Yeah, I have gate 38. I'll do it. But what's the point in fighting for this if we're not working together to build a community, to help each other out and get ahead? And it's really about that tribal thing.
Red is unconscious?
Yes, exactly. The design side. Yeah, exactly. So just to tell the story of how it works really quickly. So gate 8, gate 8 is the throat, again, expression of direction in life and so on. By the time you get to the 6th line of gate 8, we're looking at gate 20. The sixth line says, yes, yes, direction's all well and good. What does it matter if you're not present in the moment? So we enter into gate 20, the gate of the now. Gate 20 is about being in the moment totally and completely. The buzz of insects. It's existential, no past, no future. Gate 20 is purely that buzz, buzz, buzz of being in the moment. And the first line of gate 20 goes, what does it mean to be in the now? How do I know if I'm in the now or not? How do I, this is where you get Eckhart Tolle and all those people who are all about, let's be fully immersed in the moment. These are it's a kind of a gate 20 thing. It's the existential, it's part of integration circuitry. So it's the existential living in the now where your brain is turned off and you're purely in that buzz of the moment. And so again, by the time you get to the sixth line of gate 8, it doesn't care as much about self-expression, it just wants to be in the moment. Then we get to the sixth line of gate 20. By the time we get there, we're done. The sixth line is over it. Been there, done that. The sixth line says, yes, yes, I get it, being in the now, but what else is there? And it looks to the next hexagram, gate 16. Is anyone familiar with gate 16? So Trevor has gate 16. He stepped out for a moment. But gate 16 is about skills. It's a logical gate, and it is future-focused. All logic is focused on the future, what predictions we make in the future, and so on. So gate 16 is looking towards the future. It wants to improve. It wants to get better through repetition, practice, patterns, forms, creating formulas, all the logic stuff. So the first line of gate 16 asks, what does it mean to have skills? What does it mean to improve a pattern? So you can see by the time you've gotten to the end of the gate of the now, you're sick of the now. It doesn't want to be in the now anymore. The sixth line is like, I'm done with the now. I want to care about the future. I want to improve. But then you get to the end of gate 16. We're over it again. Each gate segues to the next gate. The sixth line already has 1 foot in the next gate. So the sixth line of gate 16 has 1 foot in gate 35. Does anyone know gate 35 here? 7 has this one. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. I wish she were here. But gate 35 is the gate of experience. So you can deconstruct this yourself. By the time you get to the end of the gate of skills, you realize that being in a room by yourself writing out formulas is not enough. You need experience, right? You need gate 35. So by the time you get to the end of gate 16, you go, well, I guess it doesn't actually matter. All my formulas and all of my attempts at practicing. I played this Beethoven song 200 times. Now I need to get out there and actually have a concert. I need to go on tour. I need to actually have the experience of what it is to play in front of somebody, right? And you get to the end of gate 35. By the time you get there, it says, well, not just any experience is good. What kind of experiences do I want? And the next gate is gate 45. Do you know gate 45? The gate of money. What do you do if you want to have the experiences that you want to have? You need money, right? So it keeps going and going and going. You get to the end of the gate of experience. He goes, not enough just to have any experience. I don't want to live on fast food and stay at Motel 6. I need money. I want to go overseas. I want to really get that experience. And then in RES, so it's in gate 45. So, this is what I wrote on the kind of overview for the talk. The lines tell the story of how each gate moves through its 6 phases, ending up at the conclusion that it needs the next gate to fulfill its potential. Right? Each of us are trying to fulfill the potential of the gate. By the time we get to the end of the gate, we need the next gate to fulfill it. And it never ends. It's a beautiful thing. You go through these gates and it tells a story. It's a circle, by the time you come around. So it really shows how that motion and movement are built into this thing. This is what's distinctly Chinese. If it were a Western system, a purely Western system, it would be static. It would be a grid. But there's this beautiful motion built into it, how each gate already contains within it the seed of the next gate, the necessity for the next gate to fulfill its own potential. It's really beautiful. So, all right. So I think we all have a pretty clear idea of how the gates work and how the lines work. So what I'd like to do now is anyone who wants to, we can read, and if people would like to take turns reading also, we'll read from, or I can do it, we'll read from the Rave I'Ching Line Companion, which is a collection of annotations by Ra Uru to his edition of the I'Ching. What he did was he basically wrote his own I'Ching. And you can read other versions of the I'Ching. You can read the famous Richard Wilhelm version. You can get something out of it, for sure. You can read about your hexagrams, your lines in those. But Ra really wrote it without knowing the I'Ching. This is what's amazing. He spent about a month in Frankfurt, Germany, And during that month, he quit smoking hashish. He'd been smoking marijuana and hashish habitually every day for 30 years. So it was the first time in his life that he quit smoking pot and suddenly was flooded with dreams and visions, had these incredible dreams every night. Because you'll know if you're a habitual marijuana smoker that you don't get dreams in the same way. When you quit, you often get flooded with dreams. And so during this time, he wrote the Rave I'Ching. And later he showed it to people who knew the I'Ching, and they were blown away because he wasn't using the words that were commonly used to translate from the Chinese. He didn't even know the Chinese. He didn't know any of it. He was giving his own words, his own keynotes, his own values, but you can see how they make sense. You can see how they connect to the traditional Chinese. But they're a little bit more contemporary because, the original Chinese was written 5,000 years ago. Yes?
What's the one gate that was really different again?
Gate 54, line 4 of Gate 54, was extremely different. He called it enlightenment/endarkenment. And it's the most mystical line of the I Ching. Yaya was born into that. She's a fourth line, born into the Gate 54. In Capricorn, Yaya.
Oh.
Anytime I meet Capricorns, I'm always curious when they were born, if they were born in there.
There's like espionage and like deception. Those two lines.
Yeah, if you're a spy, I knew it. Espionage and deception.
So how do you see which line you were born into? Is it on the design side or the personality?
Yeah, the moment, the personality side is the one at the exact moment of your birth. That's the one you most connect to. So we can read. And then the design side is the one of your design date, about 88 days before your birth. So yeah, if anybody would like to start. Okay. All right, Daniel. Let's do it. Do you want me to read it to you, or would somebody like to read? MF, do you feel like reading any of these, or no? Okay. Well, no, it's fine. Okay. Oh, actually, I don't even have to read this one. I can just tell you about it. We talked about this one a lot. Yeah, you can read your own, but this is one. So Daniel was born at a certain time in Gemini, a certain 21-hour segment of Gemini, which is the third line of Gate 12. And I have a lot of experience with this line because I have it. It's actually one of my nodes. And so I carry this same frequency, the same energy, and I understand it very well because it's gotten me in a lot of trouble. Now, for me, for both of us, it's an undefined throat. The first question is always, for me, is it in a defined or undefined center? Because it changes a lot. If it's in an undefined center, like in your case, then you have intermittent access to this. It'll happen intermittently, and typically if you're around somebody who has gate 22, the harmonic gate across the channel, then it really comes out full force, and it really lights up and activates. But other times it might not be as active. And the same for me, I have an undefined throat as well, so my gate 12, line 3, is not always active.
I have gate 22.
You have gate 22. There you go. So you are energizing Daniel and myself to communicate. So, yeah. So I really like this gate. The third line is a little tricky, especially because I have the detriment. You have gate 12 also. Yeah, I know. But what line do you have gate 12? It'll say
6.
dot. Yeah, so the sixth line of gate 12. I have the sixth line also. I have the third line and the sixth line. So, bless you. So, basically, and I will read from it because I think it's nice to hear it in Ra's words. But I can just tell you a little bit about it because I also have a good friend of mine from Seattle who was actually my first boss, but a friend of the family, and we've remained friends for over 20 years. And he was also born within 21 hours of you, because in that same segment of time, he also was born, and his sun is in the 12-3. He's a Gemini with the 12-3. So I'll just say my version of it. So gate 12 is all about trying to mutate the tribe. It's an individual gate, and it's part of this individual channel of romance, very melancholic, of poetry, of music. A lot of 12s are musicians, a lot of them are singers. But not always. But also they are orators, and it's a very moody channel. And it's a moody channel where they have to be in the mood. And if they're not in the mood, then it's just going to be really bad. Like when I have people who have gate 22 in my life, I have to be in the mood to see that person, or it's going to be bad. If I'm not in the mood, if we're not in the mood to hang out with each other, Like it's just not a good match. So it's deeply moody. And the same thing with even what I'm doing right here is a gate 12 thing. I'm not really amping it up too much because I'm doing a very collective sharing of general information. But at certain points, I will start getting into the actually trying to mutate the other, actually trying to change them. Because gate 12 is the only real voice of the individual to speak to the tribe. It's where the individual talks to the tribe. And if you were at our circuitry talk, you know, which was at your house 2 weeks ago, you'll know that the individual and the tribe are very, very, very different. The individual creates the fire and then walks off and forgets about it. The tribe is like, meanwhile, built a whole monotheistic religion around the fire or something. So these are very different circuitries. So gate 12 is trying to express to the tribe, trying to mutate the tribe. The tribe doesn't want to be mutated. It's not into it, you know. It's pretty hard. So how does the third line do it? Through trial and error. And the third line will make more mistakes trying to mutate the tribe. How many times is a third line with my 12-3, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I had said something different because I'm just trying to change their mind about something. I'm trying to get them to see a different perspective. I'm trying to mutate them, to put that mutation into them, to give them a little, you know, what do I mean by mutation? It's like a little tweak of the sail so that they end up sailing a different direction or something like that. It's like you're trying to just get them to just like shift slightly, and you're trying to like almost implant them or infect them with a different way of seeing things. And sometimes it works. And I've had people tell me, and you've probably had people tell you, wow, you changed my life forever. I never ever thought about it that way. I never saw it that way until you. But then you also have people who will never speak to you again, or at least I do. I don't want to speak about you. But, you know, because we've failed in our mutation of them. Because, you know,
Some people need it.
well, yeah, but the 12-3 learns more than anyone else what doesn't work in the mutation. Trying to mutate somebody, it doesn't work to like tell them directly. It doesn't work to like, or whatever, you know, you have to like leave little breadcrumbs for them to figure it out and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to read what Ra says. Now, we are jumping into the third line. One of the nice things to do, which I'd recommend everyone to do, is to get a copy of the Rave I'Ching line companion. I have the PDF. And it's around, it's easy to get. And then read the gate, and it tells the story. So again, like starting with gate 12, you get the context of it. You know, Ra's talking about hexagram 12. The 12th gate is the only social channel for the individual process, and as such, the only way in which the individual mutation can go out to the world. Right? So it's basically all about getting that individual mutation out. Ra himself had gate 12. We wouldn't know about human design if he didn't have gate 12, because we need people with gate 12. You know, if he didn't have it, he would have done the research and somebody else would have done the talks. Right? People who have gate 12 are really... I beg your pardon?
It's so important that he did both. Like going to a restaurant with the owners back there couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. He did both. He had the mutation and he got it out in the world. So, and it's under pressure because the solar plexus wave is pushing on it and telling it you have to get the mutation out there. So it's moody. It says, I know I can try if I'm in the mood. You know, that's what it's about. So when we start with the first line, it's all about how do you do it? How do you get it out there? You know, what does it really mean to mutate? The second line is basically like, leave me alone. I'm not in the mood, so don't bother me. You know, and it's basically trying to like be left alone until it's ready to do the mutation. The third line is finally ready to start trying. The third line is like, what happens if I poke this person? What happens if I get under their skin a little bit? What happens if I just give them a little twist? What happens if I call them a nickname? What happens if I do this. I mean, I love doing it. I love the pokey, playful. What happens if I give it a little twist, But it can backfire. It can blow up in your face sometimes. But it can also change their life forever.
I.e. William does not like to be called Billy.
He doesn't like Big Willie, especially. That's because, yeah, Big Willie. But yeah. No, but I was making that joke because I heard you do that the other day, but also like Vaughn getting called Grandpa. But I also nickname people. I have that same tendency to want to see what happens if I just do it's almost like social experiments. I love doing social experiments. I mean, even in some of my human design classes, I'm like, let's get all the projectors in one room and the generators in the other and see what happens. And, it's a fun thing to do. It's experimental.
Anytime you have a gate with 3, the third line, that energy is sort of there, that kind of prodding, playful, twisting.
Yeah, experimenting, seeing what they can get away with, trial and error. Yeah, so like a great example of that is gate 10. It's all about best behavior. These are the best behaved kids in the world, except for the third line of gate 10. They're all about, the 10-3. They're all about, what can I get away with? What can I do? Let's see what happens if I, wear my hat upside down or whatever. Like they're kind of more experimental with their behavior.
I was in 3 in that line, and then so the first day of school, I would get like my card pulled like 5 times just to see how much I could get away with.
Yeah, exactly. You're constantly testing. So that's what's funny about it is sometimes the lines will kind of go counter to the theme of the hexagram. The theme of gate 10 is being very well behaved and so on, but then you get to the third line, it's what can I get away with? Gate 12 is about mutation. The third line is actually good here because mutation is a trial and error process. Mutation is deeply 3. It really is. You'll see that certain lines have a connection to their hexagram theme. And so, like, the third line probably has an easier time of it than the first or the second line. Honestly, the second line in gate 12 is all about get out there and mutate. You should mutate these people. You should change them. And it's like, leave me alone. I don't want to. And, so you can see how certain combinations actually have a really hard time with it. The third line is very resilient. And the mutative process is itself a third line process. So it's this, that's why. But see, in your case, Daniel, you don't have the detriment. So there's an exaltation and a detriment for each, which are like 2 sides of it. And you actually don't have any fixing on any one side or the other. But if you hang out with me, because I have the detriment, I pass that on to you. And so the detrimental side comes out. Now, these are not, people hear detriment and they think, wow, that sounds so terrible, it sounds so bad. All it means is kind of the more difficult side of it. The detriment is, I'll get there. But anyway, but you can see how all of us have the potential to kind of express one or the other side of a line. And some of us are fixed on a particular side. I'm fixed on the detriment. So when I hang out with you, I fix you on the detriment side also, which means if we're to try to change people, there's going to be a lot more blowing up in our face than there's going to be, easily changing them. All right, the third line of hexagram 12 is called confession. When we get to the third line of the 12th hexagram, we get to people who can be very deeply disturbed. Due to this bond being made and broken, it is impossible for them to be always still. They are constantly stepping into the emotional energy of the solar plexus center, and the moment that is connected, they go through the process of trial and error. So the moment you're around someone who has gate 22, the harmonic, the moment we're around Jenna, we start doing the trial and error. We start to experiment. We start to see. When we're not around someone like Jenna, doesn't have the gate 22, it's kind of dormant. It's like waiting for the next opportunity to start experimenting. So this is a place that generates hatred. This line generates hatred. These are people that hate, pardon?
What's the line that generates hatred?
Line 3 of gate 12. And I can't tell you how many people have hated me over the years because of my faulty mutation. Because I've said the exact worst thing at the worst moment. And then later regretted it and wished I could have said something else or just said nothing at all. But again, I was activated in a way that led to the experimentation of what will happen if I say this. Will the mutation work? Nope. Now this person will never talk to me again, or whatever. But that's how it works. This line generates hatred. These are people that hate or are hated, and mostly the hate in them is self-hatred. They end up hating themselves. Now, I do want to say also that this is the generic. This is the homogenized form. Anyone who's studying human design is not going to necessarily experience it this way. You're going to be able to take a step back from it. As soon as I learned some of this, I was able to overcome a lot of that self-hatred because I was able to realize that that's a mechanism. It's a mechanic. The mechanism is I say something that humiliates me in front of a certain group of people or to a certain other individual, and then I wish I never said it and hate myself for that. And as soon as I could see that mechanic, I was freed from it to a degree. It still keeps catching you. It really does. Your whole life, you'll still continue to remind oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Oh, I wish I would have held my tongue in that moment. But at the same time, we also mutate people. It has a purpose. There's a reason third lines are so resilient. We actually find ways to get through. We realize, wow, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, up to the 100th thing that didn't work, and this did. So it's powerful. They end up hating themselves. This can be a very brutal line. A lot like the martyr in gate 10, line 3, which is part of the same individual process. These people can really be burnt at the stake emotionally. They can be scarred and burned. It's called confession. The blue line here, and these were marked in blue in the original Rave I'Ching, or maybe it was in the White Book, which came after. I think it was in the White Book. There's the Black Book, the White Book, and the Rave I'Ching were three of the kind of seminal texts that Ra wrote. And I have the Black and the White Book. I don't have a copy of the Rave I'Ching right now. But in any case, you can find these on eBay and Bookfinder and stuff like that. And so the blue lines are essentially the potential for a line after living out, after age 50, really. It's the potential for that line once you've lived it out for so many years with, awareness and deconditioning and so on. So the blue line for line 3 of gate 12 is the process of self-analysis. So the absolute best outcome is that we actually learn to analyze ourselves. The exaltation, it's Neptune. So this is an interesting one. So anyone who has Neptune in gate 12, which only happens once every 200 years, 140 years, yeah. So good luck. It's probably nobody we know alive now has that, right? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where it is in the cycle. But if Neptune is in gate 12, or anyone who has Neptune in gate 22 is going to fix the exaltation. Neptune exalted. Whenever you see Neptune exalted, you know that you have quite a process to cut through all that murk. It's not a clear process. So the exaltation, the potential then, is the recognition of inadequacies and the purging of unjustified vanities. So this is a potential that you carry, which is much, much harder for me. I may never even get there because I have the fixation and the detriment. But you don't have that fixation, so you're able to experience the exaltation or the detriment alternately at different times in your life. So, the exaltation then is the recognition of inadequacies, the ability to see where things are faulty, where they're not working, and the purging of unjustified vanities. You get rid of those vanities, you have your bonfire of the vanities, and you burn all those effigies and idols, and then you can actually get to the more purely what is that mutative core of the individual process and how it reaches people. And it oftentimes, by the way, again, channel of music, channel of poetry, channel of song, channel of, this is like the kind of Wildian channel of wordplay, all this stuff. It could be through music, it could be through singing, it could be through poetry, it can be through talking, all these things. It's a vocal channel, it's in the throat. Every time this person makes contact, it's necessary for them to explain themselves. Remember that an individual has no business being social unless they can explain themselves. If they can't, they will get into a lot of trouble socially. Not only will they be rejected, but they will have to deal with the wave on the other side because it connects to the emotional center of others. So when you're talking to others, they're receiving you through gate 22. It's creating emotional waves in them, right? It's another interesting thing. It's not like they're receiving it in their throat. They're receiving it in their solar plexus. You're speaking from your throat, and they're getting it in their solar plexus. It's an emotional reaction. Question? Okay. So every time, so you have to explain yourself, right? It's this individual thing that has to explain itself. What happens to these people is that they put that energy out, and then they discover their inadequacies, and they begin an adaptive process of learning. After all, if these people get through this process in a relatively healthy way, they have an enormous knowing within them about what really works, and when they can bring out this quality of knowing within themselves, when they can share that. Because again, it's the voice of, I know I can try or not, and it's related to knowing, which is part of the individual process. Knowing is individual compared to logic, which is like explaining it and formalizing it. With individual, you just know or you don't. So now the Mars is in detriment. This is what I have. But you would also experience throughout your life. A perverse and often exaggerated self-hatred. I've met a lot of 12-3s who are so heavy on themselves. If you're a person like that, that is okay. But if you identify with being heavy on yourself, this is a tragedy. It takes years, 40 to 50 years, to go through all this trial and error and get to the point where you can put across that explanation socially as a stranger and bring your mutation to others. The expression of inadequacies in social interaction that leads to self-analysis and caution, or inadequacies in social interaction that leads to the expression of self-hatred. Again, this is the theme I'm talking about, realizing that we weren't able to explain it. You can't cure these people of their self-hatred. It's not like you can say to them, now look, you have the 12-3 in detriment. It's a mechanic for your hating yourself. Don't take it seriously. They won't listen to you. It's individual. It doesn't listen to other outside influence. It's very difficult to do. The thing for them to recognize about the nature of that is that there is a conditioning factor in this line in the Black Book, a perverse and often exaggerated self-hatred. This means not always. Often, but not always. It does not say always. This is the only thing that can work for them, to see that out of that self-hatred, that their failure of social interaction is not about them being inadequate. It is about them not having contact with the right forces. Again, it's a third line. It's not transpersonal. It really does not understand the emotional system on the other side. And it can only learn through experience, usually painful experience. That was the 12-3. So you can see how this book goes pretty deep into what each of the lines is and how it relates to its overarching hexagram theme. Now, would somebody else like to read one for their sun line? Is anybody feeling like reading?
Well, what are you?
You want to read, John? Okay.
Sure.
Well, who wants to be read for? Trevor? Okay. You want to? So you're 48-6. That's what we figured out.
46?
Yeah, because he's born in line 6 of gate 48. So I'm just getting this for you. It is recording video. Is that okay? It's going to be on YouTube, but if anyone gets this far in it, good for them. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, they're hardcore.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get to gate 48.
So he's already got his foot in the neck, so.
Yeah, well, but this will talk about that. And but we can, if you want to read a little bit about the overview of gate 48, you can, or you can just jump right to 6.
Yeah,
I'll
because I
start
have
it.
that gate as well.
Okay, then I'll just start right on hexagram 48.
Okay, hexagram 48, the well, depth, spleen. It says, we are in a collective process. The 48th hexagram is part of the channel of talent, the channel of the wavelength, part of the logical process of correction and perfection. And as I mentioned when we were looking at the 57th gate and the 18th gate and the 48th gate, is a gate of frustration. Its possibility is to have depth, but depth without frustration is known creatively by anybody who is involved in any kind of creative process. The inability to be able to experiment, the inability to be able to see whether or not your depth can lead to a solution. The 48th gate is the gate of black magic. The 48th gate is the well. It is the darkest place you find in a chart. It is filled with all this deep, dark mystery. Black magic in the sense that it is knowledge without necessarily being able to manifest. I know how to turn straw into gold if you give me enough money to build the machinery, the 48 says. I have got it, and looks to the 16 and asks, can I experiment with this? Will you finance this? The machine, by the way, which will turn straw into gold would cost much more than the finished product, but that is another story. In the 48, in the gate of depth, there is always frustration. Is there a possibility? Can I actually get to the throat? Can I actually manifest? Can I see that this experiment will lead to a solution? Remember that frustration is one of the deepest aspects of our collective logical process. It is hard for the logic to find a motor. The 3 gates of logic in the throat do not lead directly to an energy. What that means is that we have committees and bureaucracies. We have all kinds of recommendations that are made over and over again, and the deep frustration that lies within the collective. Why can't they just do it instead of talking about it? This frustration is part of our whole logical process. So all that is rooted in the 48. That frustration is by its very nature necessary because it is so difficult to get to the energy that logic needs. The frustration is in and of itself a driving force. There is this constant tension. The 48 is part of the cross of tension, which is necessary because it has to hold on to that. I have got the depth. I have got to get it out. It is collective and not personal. There is this deep frustration in needing to share that depth. The 48th gate, the well, the gate of depth. The possibility here is the awareness resource of vital information as a pattern, or not. What is vital is determined by the 18th gate, which has the gift to recognize what needs to be corrected or perfected. This is what is vital. What often happens with the 48th gate is that every line can be its polarity. That vitality becomes trivia. There is an enormous amount of trivia that lies in depth. I have what people call a photographic memory. So not only do I remember things that seem to be of value to you, but I remember the most absurd and useless information that you could possibly imagine, i.e. theme songs of commercials on radio from 25 years ago. Things that people think that nobody should remember, I remember. The well is filled with many such things. The well is not just filled with what we think is valuable and essential truth. The well is also filled with a lot of junk. This is the whole thing about talent. Talent can be wonderful and very kitschy. The awareness possibility in the 48, correction stored as a pattern. The whole thing about depth is we know this is what has to be corrected. This is the pattern that has to be worked with. Now we will go deep into that and see exactly how we can do that. And when we pray that we meet a 16 so that we can get it out, so that we can get our experiment done. It is very difficult for logic to actually be experimented with. Please understand the nature of the expression, because most people do not understand what white and black magic means. The nature of the 48th gate is to come to grips with what is actually the right pattern, and to understand the form. To understand the form is to understand the pattern. Black magic is understanding the pattern and using that as an advantage over others. That is simply the manipulation of the understanding of something. This is what they call black magic, and in many cases the 48s are aware of patterns that others are not aware of, because they have to look for the possibility of expression. They take advantage of the patterns that they know. I consider astrologers to be black magicians, given this expression. When an astrologer does a reading, he holds the chart and you are the ignorant one. They will tell you exactly what is there because they have the power and you don't. This is the work of black magic. There is no way for you to confirm that. There is no way for you to do anything other than to accept that they know and you don't. The nature of human design is not that. Human design is not black magic. It is a knowledge of form, and a knowledge of form is available to everyone. So when a human design analyst puts a chart down on a table, you can understand exactly what they are pointing at so that you can see what is there. There is a fundamental difference between these forms. By the way, that is not to say that I think that black magic is about good or bad. It is just about understanding what the nature of the terminology is. In the 48, you are dealing with a pattern. That is the channel of talent for the collective, the depth of which can be an enormous value to the collective. When we are doing the 18th gate, the heading to it says, the vigilance and the determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. Let us not forget that that is what the 18th gate is about, to uphold basic and fundamental human rights, and to correct anything that denies those rights. When you get to the 48th hexagram, it says, the necessary and qualitative foundation that is a prerequisite to establish the common good. Without depth, without the recognition and the understanding about the nature of the form, without being able to understand the pattern, common good cannot be established. Though this can be a gate of black magic in that sense, please understand that the nature of this depth is there for the common good. It is not about telling somebody that you know what is good for them. It is about allowing them to experiment with it and find out for themselves. That is another story. So what is your gate? A 6? Okay, so we'll go to 48-6. And 48-6 is self-fulfillment. So the 6th line, the roof of the house, the line of transition is called self-fulfillment, an undiminishable resource, Venus exalted, the valued center that as it gives, it receives, and thus can continue to give. When it gives, it receives. Remember that this is a 6th line. The 18-6 is not work on what has been spoiled, it is spoiled. This is the little Buddha that everybody has to nurture. This is the one that has to be looked after and treated well. On the other side of this self-fulfillment, the depth is there, regardless. They are not inadequate. These are people with depth and understanding, but they do not particularly care about whether they experiment with it or not, in order to really see for sure if they understand. Only if they give out their understanding will the opportunity for experimentation come back, and the moment they do that, they are of value to other human beings. They can be very gifted. They already can intuitively recognize what is beyond the skills on the other side, what with the indication or direction is afterwards, when the experiment is actually proven. They recognize intuitively what can transpire out of that experiment. Moon in detriment, a tendency to superficiality that, though generous and nurturing, will lack the inspirational quality that can transform its gift into a common currency. In the White Book, a depth and potential talent that is of value to others, or where the depth is limited, the taste will be superficial and affect the quality of the possible talent. All depth is limited unless it can be experimented with. This is the ultimate limitation of all depth. The moment that you recognize something and understand it, you have to check it out And if you do not do so, you are not truly a logical being, and you will not be able to provide for the love of humanity, to provide a logical pattern that is reliable for humanity to move toward the future. So it becomes very important for the 6 lines to give their pattern to somebody else, if they themselves do not want to check it out. We know that you understand, but if you can't check it out, give it to somebody else. There is no selfishness in this. This is self-fulfilled. If the 6 lines consider that they can become enormously valuable because what they offer for experimentation can lead to something that is totally beyond the talent, it is where it goes to. It is where it goes to throughout the whole being. By the way, these are people where everybody else says that they are inadequate. This is the funny thing about this line, but they are not.
Really good job.
Gate 22 is no good.
A lot of words.
The Gate of Grace. Gate 22 is in that same channel with the 12 of oration. It is. Gate 22s are often. We're both good readers in our own ways, but Gate 22 is like such a good listener that you can tell they're listening to their words as they're saying the words.
I really appreciate that.
And it helps others listen. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. What is Gate 22? The Gate of Grace?
Yeah, and it's connected to Gate 12, which I was reading about with Daniel and myself. And so together they make this channel of oration. And the 22 is the listening side of it. The 12 is the speaking side, but they both tend to be great speakers. The 22 is the one who is often listening to the timbre and the tone of voice and the delivery.
The inflection.
And us 12s are really careful about that timbre. We oftentimes get into ASMR. Both 22s and 12s get into ASMR.
I love ASMR.
So I'm just checking out my 48 because I have 48 in both.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have 48 in both the design and the personality.
Look at our jackets. This is
I
great.
know, we're the professors, right?
So what if you have
Hot topic.
2 lines?
Really?
Like I have.
Then they're both. You can read both of them. Absolutely.
Curious.
They both will play out. Yeah. If you want to read
That's okay.
some more.
But
I
I'll
can-
read more if you need some last 3.
Let's see. Well, I usually don't go more than an hour, and we're just at an hour right now. Then we just all hang out and talk and drink and stuff. So, how is everyone doing? Do people want a break? Or are we?
I mean, it said I had to be logical to contribute, but I'm all right.
Do I look like Pitbull a little bit?
You look like Diplo? No.
The Pitbull.
Oh, Pitbull. Oh yeah, maybe.
The pop icon.
Pop icon.
You want to read some?
I will, but I need to use the restroom.
Okay. Well, let's just call it. We'll call it. We can look at this later. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
And it said that